Welcome, everybody, to episode 5 of Sound Money Matters. I'm your host, Daniel Diaz, Executive Director of Citizens for Sound Money, and we have a phenomenal show for you today. We have a great guest. She is actually, her and I have been working together on legislative matters since the spring of this year, and ever since then, we've been working hand in hand. She has also been recently elected as the chairwoman of the Sound Money Trade Association, which we mentioned a couple episodes ago with Gary Barsdorf, who was elected onto the board. So without any further ado, I'd love to introduce you our guest, Kim Coleman. Kim,
Hi,
how
Daniel.
you doing?
It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks for
talk about being thrown into the deep end of the pool. Now I'm running an association or chairing an association that you're running, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. You know, I think it's really important that you're also the chairwoman of the organization. The gold and silver community is so heavily male, you know, and there just isn't a lot of women in leadership roles in the gold and silver community. I think it was great that you took the mantle, and you know, initially you're like, I don't know, and then we're like, well, there's all these reasons why. So we really appreciate you stepping up to the plate.
Yeah, you bet. We have a lot of work to do.
Oh, a whole ton. I think we're going to get into that this episode. So what we like to do on this show for our first time guests is our late chairman, our late founder, Jim Forsyth, always started all his interviews with the same 2 questions. The first one is, why is sound money important?
So I'm actually coming to you from Goldback Inc., which is in Utah. And Utah was one of the first states, if not the first state, to really sort of go out in the policy world and say, we need to treat gold and silver differently. It needs to be recognized again as legal tender. So Utah kind of took the lead on that. So being epicenter of the beginning of that movement, that is recognizing gold and silver have been multi-millennia hedges against inflation. They keep their value. They're rare. They're fungible. They are they've been money forever. And so what we're seeing now, of course, in the country and around the globe is a return to gold and silver, and a lot of good policy movement in this area, because people do recognize what's happening with the US dollar, that people lack confidence in their purchasing power. They felt how their purchasing power has been limited, and they've lost purchasing power. And so gold being that multi-millennia hedge against inflation, we have some work to do to establish that even stronger across this country as legal tender. So sound money is the movement, and that's a lot of exciting things happening in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've been in the trenches, C4SM, for about 2.5 years lobbying across the country. You recently got hired this year with Goldback, and we met and we started lobbying together. It's tough, right? Because the underlying reason for the sound money movement is to bring freedom, right? Jim Forsyth used to say that silver is freedom, gold is freedom. And I was just watching an interview with Mike Maloney, him and David Morgan. David Morgan's on our advisory board. You know, he released a documentary recently, and he says, freedom dies when money lies. And that's exactly what it is. This currency that the government is calling money isn't really money. It's a lie. And it's basically entrapped us into this debt cycle where 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And the reason why we do what we do, why Goldback does what it does, what Citizens for Sound Money and the Sound Money Trade Association, is to bring the option for people to choose honest money versus a currency that's a lie, that isn't really money.
Right, right. And we talk about that choice, having an option and having an alternative all the time. But ultimately, that is freedom.
Yeah,
Choice is freedom. So
absolutely.
absolutely.
And since this is your first time, the second question for our audience is, tell us about your background.
Tell us about my background. So I served in the Utah legislature for 3 terms and here in Utah, and didn't have tons of experience in the precious metals world. So Daniel, you've been one of my primary mentors as I've scaled this learning curve. But, I remember back in 2011, when I was sort of a grassroots activist and really was supporting this recognition of gold and silver as legal tender in our state, and being very involved in that movement. And fast forward over a decade, and working for Goldback, which is just an exciting company. I don't really know how it happened, but I'm with this awesome company in. Let's see, we are just, I have to just kind of show you, we're just launching our Arizona Goldbacks this week. We have pre-sales started yesterday, but they're launching fully in a couple weeks. So that's exciting. And when I first heard about it, and I thought, what is this Goldback? What is this thing? So it's gold that I can actually buy. I mean, as a regular person, I can go buy this. I can have gold in my wallet. I can have gold in my purse. So this was a game changer for me, that I can access actual gold without having to spend, what is it, where gold is right about $4,000 a troy ounce right now. So really didn't have a lot of background. I'm actually a charter school founder. So I have lived in the world of school choice. So economic choice is just as close parallel to freedom and choice. And I'm a mom of 5 children, 4 grandchildren. So just excited to be in this very active precious metals world, and the exciting things that are happening. And sometimes when we talk about that historically gold does well when the dollar doesn't do so well, and we know that we have issues with the dollar. But I was listening to a podcast with Edward Dowd a couple weeks ago, and he was very sort of bullish on, we really can have both. We can have choice. We can have a robust precious metals market, and let's make sure dollar doesn't go the way of bricks and things like that. So that's my hope, that we keep that dollar strong, but the gold choice is also very robust and bullish.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Goldback, it's a great product, right? Because most people can afford to buy an ounce of silver. This is 1 troy ounce of
Yeah,
kinesis.
so you have one of those. I don't yet.
But they can afford to buy a $4 Goldback,
Yep.
right? It's a half Goldback or a full Goldback, which is $8, I think, 2 cents today. So that's the beauty
Wait,
of it.
can I just say, I have to show this one. I don't know if you can see this very well,
Yeah, let
but
me
this
zoom
is
in.
the Arizona 5.
Oh yeah.
And that
Oh,
is a
I
cool,
love it.
tombstone gunslinging woman. Just
Yeah,
saying.
exactly. I used to say that Florida was the best. I am Floridian, and when Oklahoma came out, I didn't think it did better than Florida. But honestly, when you showed us, because Kim, you joined us at in Phoenix when we went to go see our new headquarters, at the Zhang Enterprise building. You showed me Arizona. I'm like, crap. Arizona is better than Florida.
I mean, they are all beautiful. And I don't know what it is, what we're doing with the 5, but the Florida 5 was also my favorite. It was the pirate.
Yes.
Now we have tombstone gunslinger. Yeah, the 5s tend to be my favorite. But to your point, this 5 is very accessible. This
Yeah.
is like regular person accessible.
Uh,
You're
No, 100%. And I love the modern backed currency. It's not even backed, right? It is gold.
It is the
It's not.
gold. I
It
don't know
is the
why we
gold.
call it gold. I actually don't know why we call it gold backed, because it is actual gold. It is the actual 24 karat gold.
Yeah.
And but it is it's gold
It,
and it's gold backed. So
and, yeah, and I love what you guys have done with your website, showing scenes of people actually spending their gold backs. And right now, there's over 3,600 merchants that accept gold backs. And for those who are watching, you can go to the website and go to where are we? Pay with gold backs, and that will pop up a map. So you just type in your zip code or city, and it shows you. Look at this. Look at how many merchants. And I think last month was a record in October. You guys had over 20% growth in merchants. And this is Canada and the US. And there's actually people, I think if you zoom out and go to the rest of the world, there's people around the world taking gold backs too. I think in Dubai. It's a great tool right there. Africa, Dubai, Europe. So
I mean,
people
it's
are
gold. It's so
gold. It's
anybody who
fungible.
wants to exchange and trade in gold, it is actual gold. So
Yeah.
I also like to plug the app, because the app, there's a gold back app that will pull up that map real time. It's fun for me to be in other cities and other states
Oh
and
yeah.
just sort of randomly pull up the map and see who is close to me at any given moment that would accept gold back in payment, or in exchange for goods or services, and where you can purchase them. So you don't have to go far these days to find someone who says, I will gladly accept a gold back for for a merchant service or goods. So it's
Yeah.
very exciting. We are watching those numbers go up weekly, because people are really using them and acquiring them. And sometimes the art is a double-edged sword. Like, some people are like, well, I don't want to mess it up because it's
Yeah.
okay, but we're like, no, give them, go use them, transact them, exchange them. That's what they're
Yeah.
for.
And that's a definitely a thing, right? Some people see it as a numismatic artwork that they want to just collect and stack, and that's fine. That's definitely a viable option. But the purpose of gold backs was to fix money, bring money back, and spend it. So I don't have my wallet near me, but I have my gold back wallet, and I like giving out tips. I like spending it at my local coffee shop or my other merchants around the country when I find them. um and that's the purpose of bringing the sound money movement back. We're trying to defeat Gresham's law. For our audience that doesn't know what Gresham's law is that
Mhm.
bad money, meaning the currency, right? I got a little bag of
We'll
foreign
push out
currency
the
right here,
good.
pushes out good money, meaning when they debase the currency, or if there is a less valuable medium of exchange in the economy, people start saving and pulling out silver dimes, silver quarters. They start when we were on a gold standard, they just stacked the gold and they took it out of the bank, because that's just Gresham's law. So how do you reverse Gresham's law? Well, you have to make it transactional, right? This is a physical
Mhm.
transactional gold, because prior to this, you couldn't buy 1/2000th of an ounce of gold. I'm not even sure what a grain of gold is compared to troy ounces, but I think a grain of gold is larger than a 1/2000th orum. So it's quite interesting. And then in our pursuit to bring sound money and freedom to the people, we've had to battle, right? We've had to fight legislatively, not just against, say, the bankers or other special interests, but even people in our own movement who have a different view of how sound money should operate. And I think that's why we decided over a year ago, Larry Hilton and I, we were actually meeting in NASA just to meet up, and we just came up with this idea. Why don't we create a Bretton Woods type system, or an organization that brings the industry together, because the industry is so underrepresented. We've never had a lobbying group, a trade organization for the gold and silver community, and I think it's so pivotal that we do push for sound money legislation and bring companies who believe in the sound money mission to bring freedom.
Okay, so can we just start high level on what are those I call them the foundational policies. There are some fundamental policies that every state should have. And it, again, it started in Utah in 2011, and having states recognize gold and silver as legal tender. And that is still a slow moving piece. There's a lot of states that we still need to do that. But I think for a lot of people new to this, the part I could understand as I was learning is that the government taxes the acquisition of gold and silver. So in the way that tangible property is taxed, a sales tax or even a capital gains tax when it's tax time, why do we treat gold and silver that way? We treat them as commodities and assets rather than money. And so there's been a lot of good movement across the country to remove sales tax and capital gains tax from gold and silver, and but we still have work to do there. So there are these government taxman barriers to acquiring gold, holding gold, using gold, that this is why we're here, and why Daniel and I sort of met each other in the hallways of a Capitol building initially, because there are these opportunities that are necessary and that have been ongoing. And I do like to give credit also to Sound Money Defense League, who's done a lot of the good tax work, but we're just still not done. And no sooner do we feel like the landscape is very, very favorable to get these fundamentals done, get these tax barriers removed, get this recognition of gold and silver as legal tender restored, when there's also threats. And I think, Daniel, you just described it as some in this movement have a little bit of a different view of what should happen. And it may be actually a little bit more than that, but there are threats to this that want to restrict physical gold from these benefits.
Yeah.
And to me, that is so incongruent. If you understand that the moment is now, and it's past now, that we should restore treating gold and silver as money, as currency, then why would you say, but only the digital stuff? And that's what we're dealing with. There are some people that do want to create policies that recognize gold and silver as legal tender, but only non-physical gold, only electronic. So I don't know if you're ready to go there.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. So yeah, at Citizens for Sound Money, let me just make our position clear. We are for all sound money. We're for physical sound money. We're also for transacting and digital sound money. We support both. We came up with a term called asset-backed digital currencies, with Sound Money Trade Association used, and we have different tier levels, right? So we're not against electronic. We're not against physical. But there are organizations out there, or companies, because we're the only nonprofit, so let's call them companies out there, that are only focused on the physical side, which is fine. We're good with that. And only focus on the electronic. That's fine too. But the problem comes when they push policies that only favor physical or only favor digital. And that is where there's this this friendly infighting, right? Like, we lobby and we kind of like, well, wait a second, you're only focusing on electronic. How about the physical? And there's one group or company that doesn't like electronic. There's another company that doesn't like electronic and they only push physical. And that's fine. We're trying to bridge that gap and unite the whole movement. And that's why we've chartered Sound Money Trade Association. That's why Citizens for Sound Money, we've been lobbying. That's been the main mission, to promote the use of sound money, all sound money, and protect people's rights to do so by passing legislation. So I think that, we just got to figure out, because look, let me just, before you comment, Kim, let me just put the mindset. The physical people fear digital. right? They fear the digital economy coming because there are well-known people in the sound money movement that think that's the first step towards a government takeover of our privacy and our freedoms. Now, there's the electronic side that believe that states or even private companies are better at transacting digital, and that nobody really uses physical anymore because we're in the 21st century. So their mindset is, let's make gold and silver electronic and let's focus on that in our lobbying efforts, because nobody really uses like a physical. Like I was told, well, what are you gonna do? You're gonna do shavings
Yeah,
of
you're gonna do that.
no, you use gold backs, right? You use fractional silver, like the
Well, that's
silver
one.
bit.
I mean, go back is one option, but yeah,
Yeah,
you have
it's little silver bits by it's called local silver mint up in Weir, New Hampshire. It's not zooming in, but they're 1/10 ounce rounds. They're about $5-6 right now. So you can definitely transact in physical. And here's what's interesting: the people on the physical side just don't they understand the digital, but they're so fearful of the government taking over and tracking all our transactions. It's a non-starter. And then the physical, they're so focused on that nobody uses this false narrative that nobody uses physical. Nobody really carries cash, so we have to do digital. And that's fine. They can have that, but when they're pushing policies that are only those two areas and don't bring them together, I think that's what you
well,
and I are really pushing against.
I mean, we actually had this, an effort in Louisiana where physical gold was recognized, and then they went and amended physical gold out and
Yeah.
only made electronic gold and U.S. minted gold as legal tender. Like actively remove the physical
Point.
gold piece. And you know what? That's hostile. I
Yeah.
mean, that's really hostile to the physical gold movement.
Yeah.
And it's very antithetical. And so I think that is your big red flag is if you see policies that are trying to only support electronic gold to the exclusion of physical gold, then understand that policy is not supportive of the sound money movement. But there's one thing that's even more insidious than just that.
Yes.
And that is what they're actually trying to do. So it is not just a sort of red herring fear of physical gold people, the gold supporters, to say we're concerned about the government. These bills, and these were a couple dozen bills, literally asked or would have directed a new state government program, a new bureaucracy with new bureaucrats to take over a large section of the gold market. So basically establishing your state treasurer's offices as new gold stores.
Yeah.
That is as bad as a antithetical free market policy can get, where we've got so many companies. I don't know, Daniel, you probably know how many companies we have across this country that buy and sell gold and silver and precious metals.
Oh yeah.
A number of companies have the ability
thousands of companies. Yeah.
and then these companies usually direct you to how you can have that stored privately and privately. But what these bills sought to do was move that all over into a new government program. And that really is as scary as it comes. And I just don't see it. And why this is happening and why some people have actually kind of fallen for this. But once we are able to help them understand this, why are you asking the government to take over something that is already being done in the private sector? The demand is being met. It's viable and thriving. It is regulated to some reasonable level, against the fraud and things like that. Why in the world do you want your state government to compete with your small coin dealer or your big, like APMEX, large distributor? Why would you put this in the hands of government? And the craziest part about this is you'd watch a committee hearing on a Capitol Hill, and the presenters would actually bemoan the problems with the dollar and inflation, and the stories of, you know, the widow who had to go back to work and the single mom, and, you know, the cost of eggs, and how it's the federal government that really broke our system.
Yeah.
So let's have another government take over the gold world.
Yeah.
So antithetical, so incongruent. And if you believe that government broke the system, why? And gold is a life raft, is an alternative, is that freedom way to not have to rely on the government system. Why are we asking another government system to take over the gold market? So, and yeah, like I said, this was, Daniel, I think when we first met, we thought this was maybe going on in, you know, a handful of states, and then we'd become aware that it's in a dozen states, and now it's 24 states, and most of them failed. So, you know, good thing. You know, several of us were effective at helping legislatures understand that this is the government trying to compete with the private sector, and no one's asking for that, but one or two people in these committee meetings. But they, you know, they're going to come back. I mean, they vowed to, they're talking about trying this in about 30 states this next year, which means these bills are filed. They're in some process of drafting or will be drafted, and they will come to a state legislature near you. So, and as bad as that gets, these bills allow the bureaucrats to determine the price of gold at any given time, at the time of a transaction. So it's literally putting your gold transactions in the government's hands.
Yeah, no, 100%. And to give some examples of state policies or state not statutes, bills that are currently in government, Michigan is the worst, hands down, because not only do they take over the depository, not only do they want to price it, they want to make their own gold-backed cryptocurrencies, and they want to set up their own bullion shops that are run by the state, like ABC's liquor stores in Virginia and in the Northeast. They want to control. That is hands down the worst piece of legislation. And then there's others that aren't as bad, but are pretty. I would even question the constitutionality.
Michigan wants to establish something called the Mitch coin, and it actually directs the Michigan state government to use all means of advertising to promote its storefront, basically, and depository services, like you mentioned. So if you put your gold in the Michigan State Depository, that's a governmental entity that is absolutely must track what you do. But they're going to advertise. They even they direct the licensing of promotional products. So I'm like, okay, we're going to have Fuzzy Bunny Mitch coin, you know, Fuzzy Bunnies trying to advertise and promote themselves over your local, whether it's a local small coin dealer or a large gold distributor. These private sector companies, including Goldback, as you know, is one of the companies that produces a gold product. Everyone would be competing against the Michigan government, and a lot of these either direct their treasurer to either start their own depository that has this, you know, public facing activity, or they can contract with Texas Depository, which is the only current state depository that services the public. And so, I mean, I'm imagining half the country has contracted with the Texas State Bullion Depository, which, imagine that level of government competing against the private.
Yeah.
I mean, Texas alone. But if all these states choose to not spend billions to build their own depository, but to contract with Texas, um, I don't know why the alarm bells are not just ringing off the hooks. And really, I guess that's our job as, the
Yeah.
Sound Money Trade Association, Citizens for Sound Money, a couple other partners out there who are, or allies, I should say, who are also sounding this alarm. Do we really want to move the precious metals marketplace into a new government or bureaucracy?
Yeah. And
That's right.
no, 100%. It's well. Let me. I got a few things I want to break down. First, I want to clarify: we're not saying that we're against a state having a depository for its
Right.
own gold. We're
Right.
not even against the state of Texas holding the gold of other
Right. In fact,
sovereign
I think
states.
that's a good policy. I think
Yeah,
states should, and Utah, I think may have also been the first state to do this, is we require by law at least 10% of our rainy day fund or our
yeah,
reserve funds to be held in gold.
yeah.
So it can be a state's treasury hedge against inflation. Mike, that's a good thing for individuals as well as your state government. So absolutely, deposit gold, hold gold reserves.
Yeah. And to clarify our position, we're saying we don't want the state depositories to actually hold private citizens' gold and silver because of multiple reasons. One, there's a concept called the loss leader. Because these state depositories are partially funded by the government, they can actually lower prices at a loss because they're getting funded so they could compete against and beat the pricing for storage, right? That's number
Well,
one.
even Connecticut's bill expressly directs the treasurer to sell gold at a price less than can be acquired in the private market. So specifically says, less fees and intermediary costs that are associated with the private sector. The taxpayers of Connecticut get to assume that so that the treasurer can offer cheaper gold
Yeah.
or lower cost gold.
And that's just one of the reasons. Another reason is that a lot of these bills that are out there are setting up RFPs, which are requests for proposals, to basically contract one or two companies, right? That creates a public-private partnership, and it basically creates a monopoly within the state of which companies will actually operate gold and silver, which also puts the rest in the industry. Look at what happened.
Which may also answer the question, why are we seeing
There might
companies
there Yeah, I mean, like
in
I said,
committee hearings?
we're the only nonprofit organization. We're not captive. We support the whole industry. We have a bunch of partners, but some of these companies are just DBAs of one company, or they're partnered with another company, and they have their own interests.
And Daniel,
Um,
this is a part I think we have to make sure people understand. The gold, the sound money movement based in freedom is naturally based in free markets. We
yes,
want this to be in a free space, and with people making choices. And so people sometimes misunderstand that when the government contracts with a private entity, that makes it private. It does not in any way, shape, or form. It is still a governmental service. It's still a governmental program, whether the government does it themselves in-house or whether they contract with someone in the private sector to do it. It still remains a government program,
yeah,
subject to all kinds of concerns about privacy.
yeah. And to play devil's advocate, because I talked to one of the representatives of these companies, and he told me, he's like, "Look, I'd rather trust the state." And his example was, what happens when the federal government decides to confiscate gold and silver? He's like, for private companies, they can just go in and take it, but they'll have a hard time with Texas, right? Or whatever other state that has a depository. And my response to that is, look at what Missouri did. Missouri passed an anti-confiscation uh, law with the Constitutional Money Act that prevents any government entity from taking gold or silver without due process, which means the federal government too. And that means the state now has a legal right to defend its residents, its citizens within its borders from federal confiscation. So state law in that case, because of Article 10 of the Constitution, prevails in that instance. Now, if there's a legitimate reason for confiscation, like if you're a drug lord or something, you're money laundering, yeah, they're obviously going to go to the due process and you'll get your gold and silver taken. But there is that process, that stopgap. So this, my answer to his rebuttal is like, well, I trust the state governments fighting off the federal government. Well, just pass a state law that empowers the state to protect private citizens in private vaults. That's
Well,
the solution.
yeah, that works. And there were a couple of states that ran bills. I don't remember how many passed, how many failed, but there were a couple states that tried to bolster your gold assets by making it harder for the federal government to take this, but with no thought that the state might,
Right.
if the state actually physically has your gold. The thing about in what was it, 1933, is that the year?
Yeah.
uh,
1933.
where the federal government ordered people to walk their gold to whatever entity, to the government, federal
Federal
government
Reserve
was
Bank.
seizing this gold.
Mhm.
And so now we have states contemplating that a state government is going to put it in a lockbox under state control. And I think people need to remember the nature of government is what it is. And there hasn't been a lot of expression of concern that the state government may decide, you know what, we'll pay you out, we're keeping your gold.
Yeah. No,
We'll go ahead and give you some fair market. What they remember, the law allows them to determine the price of gold at the time of transaction. We'll pay you out, but we're keeping your gold. And
yeah.
and by the way, it's locked up in a state depository, or
Yeah.
it's maybe not even there. It's in Texas.
Yeah, 100%. And look, the state, and only the state, has a monopoly on coercion. And what we're proposing is that when it comes to the free markets, private companies that are audited, they have to be audited, right, for it to be legitimate. Otherwise, they can just steal gold and silver. But audited companies have an incentive not to go to jail for the rest of their lives. The government has no incentive whatsoever because they are, yeah,
Immunity.
yeah.
Immunity.
Right. So, like, there's so many reasons why we at City for Sound Money, Sound Money Trade Association, are focused on free market solutions. Now, one thing that you and I identified as a problem was there's so many different versions of the Sound Money or Constitutional Money Act out there. So we decided, City for Sound Money, through our nonprofit Sound Money movement, to join ALEC, and we discussed, and Goldback also joined ALEC, and to come up with model legislation. Now, just like normal lobbying, it's basically the same thing at ALEC. We didn't get the perfect bill, but we got something passed so that it's more of a framework. So the Transactional Gold and Silver Act, essentially, I'll just read the summary. The model policy recognizes gold and silver as legal tender for private transactions, and when accepted, for paying state and local taxes or fees. It authorizes the creation of secure bullion depositories and a specie-backed electronic payment system to support this use. It exempts gold and silver transactions from state sales, use, and income taxes. And that's great. And this was a good policy. I think I think the one thing, and if you remember, we don't have a problem. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, this is an example of what we saw in a lot of states, that your gold can enjoy legal tender status, but only if you've decided to place your gold in a government depository and you transact it only electronically. So again, this policy tends to disfavor physical gold, but really, if that's the choice, is it a choice? If my choice is it's legal tender only if it's in a government program versus my local, coin dealer and depository, do I have choice?
Yeah.
And how, again, how antithetical it is to the free markets. And, Alec's tagline is free markets. And so it's really unusual to see a bill like the or a model policy like this come out of ALEC that wants to shift private sector activity over to a governmental function. It's not usually what you see out of ALEC.
Yeah.
So
And Kim, I think we actually changed that. That might have been the first version, because this version does make physical gold and silver legal tender as long as it's 999 fine. Where our concern was where the state is operating the bullion depository. That's
right,
where. So
right.
we did lobby the two legislators in ALEC to change it so physical was recognized, which we did. We got that done. But the problem is now you see the state chief fiscal officer will promulgate the rules to designate and establish a bullion depository for the secure storage of silver, and authorize a specie-backed payment system to enable vendors to receive payments from the state of whatever or political subdivisions using it. And then it says the chief financial officer of equivalent office will operate the bullion depository directly or contract. Now this is where we're getting the issue. This was our only issue. We fixed a bunch of other things, which was the physical and legal tender and so forth, and changing electronic currency to electronic payment system, because electronic currency is unconstitutional. It's a bill of credit. Where we didn't have the political appetite or will at ALEC to change this, because it was at the last minute, and we had other companies there trying to. So this is overall a good bill, except for this. And this is where we at Citizens Sound Money and Sound Money Trade Association and Goldback will fight against. We don't want the state to operate the bullion depository. Great model legislation for the physical side, electronic payment system. This section right here, we wanted to cut out, but we just didn't have the time or the political will to get it done. And that is something that we talked to the two sponsors, and they were open to amending this. So we'll see at ALEC this December whether or not we can bring this model legislation back and edit it to get rid of the states running the bullion depository.
Right. So, I mean, hopefully there are some pieces that are taken from this ALEC model that are good, but the bills we saw run in so many states only recognize gold and silver legal tender that was placed in a state program, state agency, depository, and transacted electronically. And, there's some interesting things. I mean, even Utah had a bill that would allow the state treasurer to pay state contractors, and I think at one point even employees, but I think the final bill was just contractors in gold. And it kind of ran this similar scheme of, okay, let's find some single vendor contractor to facilitate that exchange when you can already do it. I mean, it's already done in the private sector. If I was a contractor with the state of Utah, I would just simply say, here's my ACH, pay me here. It hits my account in gold. And but what this other system might contemplate, or in at least in other bills we saw, is you've got to now have a state treasurer going out and buying gold in whatever bulk, whatever purchasing power a state government has to go in and say, we're going to compete with the private sector, and we're going to use our mass muscle to there's no way that doesn't skew the market, that doesn't have an impact on the market when government then becomes a big purchaser. And then when you look at Connecticut, and the intent is, and the direction is, to make sure it costs less than the private sector.
Yeah.
And I want to say it's Connecticut, I can't remember, said that any depository fees of a certain amount that are charged by a third-party contractor would be paid by the citizens of that state.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if people are really seeing these elements in these bills. And I think what happens frequently is, if you're not an expert on it, you look to people who are, and you kind of trust certain people, I'm speaking as a former legislator now, or sometimes it's just packaged in a way that sounds good. And like I said, I've listened to so many, or I've even been in some of these committee hearings where it's very emotionally appealing. It's very fear provoking that, look what's happening with the dollar. Look what's happening with your grocery bill. Look what's happening with, housing costs. Look at all these things that we are all very concerned about. And the answer is gold, which we agree. Part of the answer is gold.
We're 100% on that. Those
But
talking points.
the policy that then got pushed in is not so gold friendly.
Yeah, it's not physical gold friendly.
It's not physical gold. It establishes new state programs and state bureaucracies to compete with gold and compete with the private market, which has. There's a Louisiana hearing that was just amazing, where one of the representatives asked the presenters, give us one compelling reason state government should enter this market that is viably met in the private sector. And one sponsor said, we think government can do it better and cheaper. And the co-presenter, who represents, kind of one of these companies, said, plus people trust the government. And I just went like every goosebump, hair standing up on the back of my neck. I'm like,
I don't trust the government.
Have you seen this movie?
Oh my gosh. I mean,
I'm going to do it better and cheaper, and people trust the government after you just gave a 20-minute presentation on how the government broke it.
Can we just go back 5 years to 2020 and ask our citizens and those watching, do we really trust our state governments like California and New York and all that and the rest of the country that shut down and destroyed our civil liberties? Thank God for Florida, where DeSantis realized very quickly this isn't working, and we were the second state behind Georgia to lift all the lockdowns, right? And then California and New York kept their lockdowns for almost a year, and there was an exodus out of California, New York to Florida and Texas and other free states. And do you really trust your state governments? Do you really trust the people?
I mean, if I can use gold back as an example, I don't know how many, tens and tens of thousands of people who use these, who buy them, who exchange them, collect them. Nobody is calling us and saying, hey, we think the government should do this, and I can't think of any of our distributors and again, small and big, who are saying we can't keep up. We need the government to take this over. And it's not coming from consumers. You don't have gold consumers saying, I would rather deal with the government than Alpine Gold Exchange or APMEX or JM Bullion. Nobody is asking for this, but it
and
they hit a lot of states and are trying to convince people that are legislators that this is needed. And so that is kind of our job, is to help people understand it's not.
Right.
And by the way, listen to what you're asking for. You're literally suggesting we take it away or compete. And maybe that's a little bit slippery slope, but that is basically how, you mentioned the government can be the loss leader. The government can subsidize all day long with taxpayer money to put this, put gold out cheaper to the market. Ultimately, that's going to put your small guys out of business first. And your big guys eventually, when government's now determining the price of gold, state governments, as if they're going to just do, competition with the private sector. Your state government can do that with the federal government. And I kind of play the game of name another industry. What if, it's, the state's going to start running restaurants. And now, you're if you ever want to go out to eat fast food or sit down, it's a government, state government program. So why do we even think
that was tried in the Soviet Union It's tried in North Korea. It's tried in Cuba. And they are all horrible. They loved it in the Soviet Union when the first McDonald's opened up, and it was one of the busiest restaurants because, well, freedom. We produce better outcomes when the state is not running it.
You can
So
only buy your cars from state
yeah,
government. You can only buy beef from state government. I mean, why do we think this is okay to move this to a governmental program?
and
I
I
mean,
mean
we
that's
don't, but
yeah, we don't, but
I mean,
that
it
that does.
passed though. It passed in a couple of states.
Yeah, I know. And the problem is just you're right. There is that emotional appeal, and then we're like, oh, this is a great idea. Oh, and the state gets some income too because we're partnering with this company, and the company's going to give us a kickback on all transaction fees. Right? It's a rent-sinking model. So
Right.
the state is thinking what's in the best interest of the state. They're not thinking what's in the best interest of the industry that the state's going to be competing against. Right? And we're going to wrap up here soon. We got a few minutes left. I want to use this example with Maryland. Maryland, it's a very small state with I think 5 states surrounding it. I think if that's right, maybe 4. They got rid of the sales tax exemption, and you know what immediately happened when that went into effect? The bullion dealers in the state of Maryland lost 80% of their business year over year when the sales taxes, because they just left the state to go buy their gold and silver. The surrounding state bullion dealers, they've seen an increase of 300 to 500% in sales year over year because the government policy drove them out. It's killing an industry, and we
Yeah, I mean,
want
that's the law of taxation. I mean,
yeah,
you tax it, people are going to go to the next
yeah.
county, the next city, the next state.
And that's what happens when the government meddles in the free markets. Every time the government meddles with the free markets, whether it's price ceilings or getting involved with industry, it destroys it. Right? There's a great book called "The Myth of the Robber Barons," where it compares companies that were subsidized versus companies that weren't. And you know which ones are still standing? The
Right.
companies that weren't, because they
Yeah,
were a
and
lot more efficient.
I mean, and it is tax policy has consequences, absolutely. And you're seeing businesses flee New York because of tax policy, and that is a tool that the government can use that actually will absolutely impact a market. But it is even a bigger step to take it over.
Yeah.
And not only are we going to have rent control on your apartment building, but we're just going to be the apartment. We're going to just own all the apartments. And, you
Yeah.
know, it's so crazy to me.
How did
And
that work out?
it, so we really have with the Sound Money Trade Association coming together. And this is, Daniel, you mentioned that you guys, originally thought about this about a year ago. When I started realizing these bills were making their ways and I'm listening through these committee hearings and there's nobody stepping up to speak out against these, I'm like, where's
Yeah.
the association? So
Yeah.
this is really needed. The association is needed. And, so I work for Goldback. It's who, what I do, who I work for. But you all trusted me to take over the chair piece for this new association because we need more people to come together, and it's in good hands with you running running this association. But we have so much to do to make people aware, and whether this is your local, again, who you're buying your gold from, let them know. Tell them if you are a consumer of gold, if you're a dealer, you're a distributor, you're a collector, understand that there is an effort to create more barriers to physical gold, to create favorable conditions for electronic gold to the exclusion of physical gold. And bottom line is shifting a lot of this over to governmental bureaucracy. We look forward to having more entities come into this association and join us so we can have our combined influence to have better policies and and mitigate some of these threats that we're seeing. And I don't say that lightly. You started this conversation, Daniel, with talking about, there's sort of should be industry allies. But we cannot take this lightly at all,
Yeah.
that there is an effort to suppress physical gold.
Yeah. No, 100%. And physical gold is a privacy matter, or physical silver is a privacy matter. And for those who are never going to get into digital anything, there's a whole segment of the population in the Midwest that do not have bank accounts or Zells or Venmos or whatever, PayPal. They don't even have email addresses. They only deal with physical cash and physical metals. That's a whole segment of the population.
Well, in Arizona, I think Arizona, but there are several more, actually has reporting requirements in their bill that the depository would report the transaction activity to their Secretary of State, to their state legislatures. A number of states in their bills had this. So, I mean, it's right there, black and white on paper, on your screen. You can read it, that it's not just a privacy fear. It is known, it is expressed in the bill that the government will be recording transactions and reporting transactions. So I don't know how it's gotten as far out there as it has, but we need help to get the word out.
Absolutely. And we're going to wrap it up here. Kim, is there anything last words you want to share with the audience?
Other than, again, just another pitch for, I wear two hats right now on this podcast. I do work for Goldback. We have a fantastic product that lets a lot of people access gold and use it. We've just launched Florida pre-sales this week, but for my role in the Sound Money Trade Association and working with you, Daniel, is helping us spread the word. So you can contact me, Kim, at goldback.com. And if you want to get more involved with the Sound Money Trade Association, or either of us, for generally the sound money movement, how you can get engaged. And I think in the next year, Daniel, I mean, sooner than later, we'll have training for citizens to engage and businesses to engage in the policy advocacy world, lobbying, citizen lobbying, business lobbying. So we're going to be developing tools and bringing them to more people.
A lot of education. Well, Kim, thank you so much for coming on the show, and looking forward to having you come on more often to discuss what's going on legislatively, as I think these legislative updates, as lobbying season is now getting started off. I think we might be going to Florida next week, and then just around the country. So
things happening nationally too. So
yeah, things are happening nationally. Yeah, all over the place. There's a bunch of states that we're keeping an eye on, and that we're probably going to lobby and testify against those provisions that we discussed. Well, thank you for coming on, Kim, and we'll have you on next time. Thanks. All right, everybody, that was our episode. Thank you for watching. If you want to support what we're doing with the Sound Money Trade Association, we're the charting organization. It's independently run. The board of directors has temporarily chosen me to be executive director of the trade association. And you support what Citizens for Sound Money is doing in the Sound Money movement. Please support our organization by becoming a Pioneer member. You can go to citizensforsoundmoney.org. Right there's the website. Go to members, click on become a member, and you can join at $25 or $100. This is the basic membership, and if you do $100, we will send you a free ounce of digital silver through Kinesis. And we are launching, and this is breaking, we are launching our state chapters. I've recently appointed a state chapter in Illinois. I'm looking to appoint a state chairman in Illinois, state chairman in New Hampshire, and we already have one in Florida. So we're looking to expand our organization, and if you join the state organizations. You'll become a member. You'll have local meetups on sound money and so forth. Just if you're interested, please email us at support@citizensforsoundmoney.org. Support@citizensforsoundmoney. Just that's the back end. And then if you want to get a tax deductible donation to our education foundation, please go to soundmoney.org. Soundmoneymovement.org. Soundmoneymovement.org. You can help fund our scholarships, our TV show, our curriculum development, or the Sound Money Academy. And if you're watching on YouTube or X, you can follow us on X at 4soundmoney, at 4soundmoney, and also please subscribe on YouTube at 4soundmoney as well. Well, everybody, thank you so much for coming and watching and being faithful followers of the Sound Money movement. We really need all of your support. This movement doesn't exist without you. So go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and follow and join the Sound Money movement today. God bless you all and have a great weekend.